Clear. Strength is born in solitude because when the noise dies down and the distractions fade, you are left with yourself and with God, and that is where the deepest transformation begins. Clear. So many of us spend our lives surrounded by people, leaning on their affirmations, their validations, their applause, and their presence to measure our worth. Clear. But when the room empties and the crowd disperses, when the people you thought would never leave have walked away, clear. When the ones you love the most cannot be found in the season you need them most. It is there, in that lonely space, that strength begins to rise. Solitude is not the absence of love. Clear, it is the presence of refinement, the sacred classroom where God teaches you to breathe without depending on someone else's oxygen. Clear, it is the place where you learn that your heart may be broken, but it is still beating. Your dreams may be crushed, but they are still alive. Clear, your spirit may feel empty, but it is still capable of being filled. Clear, solitude forces you to look in the mirror of your soul and confront the parts of yourself you avoided when you were distracted with company. It forces you to sit with your own fears, clear your own failures, your own weaknesses, and your own pain. And in that confrontation, you discover that weakness doesn't have to mean defeat. Clear, weakness can become the soil where God plants new seeds of strength, resilience, and power. Clear, solitude teaches you that your worth is not dependent on who claps for you or who walks away from you, but on the unshakable truth that you are already chosen, already loved, already worthy. Clear, in solitude, the masks come off. You no longer have to perform. You no longer have to pretend. Clear, you no longer have to carry the heavy armor that kept you looking strong while you felt weak inside. Instead, you can collapse into the arms of grace, and in that collapse, clear, you find that you are not falling apart. You are falling into the hands that built you in the first place. Clear, strength is born in solitude because it is in that silence where you begin to hear God's whisper louder than the world's noise. The voices of doubt, of shame, of regret. Clear, they try to scream, but solitude gives God the microphone of your soul, and his voice cuts through the lies. He tells you that the rejection was redirection. Clear, that the heartbreak was preparation, that the loss was pruning for greater growth. Solitude allows you to realize that the absence of people does not mean the absence of purpose. Clear, it teaches you that even when no one else shows up, God is still present, faith and strong, holding you steady when you cannot hold yourself. And slowly, clear, solitude shifts from feeling like punishment to becoming a sacred sanctuary, a place where you discover that strength doesn't come from who stands with you, clear, but from the one who stands inside you. When you are in solitude, you begin to learn the power of your own voice. You start praying in ways you never prayed when people were around. Clear, you start dreaming in ways you never dreamed when life was crowded with noise. You start creating, imagining, clear, and envisioning things you never gave yourself permission to embrace because you were too busy catering to everyone else's needs. Solitude is where creativity is birthed. Clear, where healing begins, where vision is sharpened, and where identity is anchored. It is where the woman inside you, the strong woman God has been shaping all along, clear, starts to break through the shell of fear and insecurity. You find yourself realizing that even if you are alone in the room, you are still enough. You are still powerful. Clear, you are still chosen. And in that realization, strength rises not as a momentary burst, but as a permanent foundation you will carry with you for the rest of your life. Clear, solitude also teaches you to separate your strength from your circumstances. When life is good, when people are clapping, when everything looks like it's falling into place, clear, it's easy to feel strong. But what happens when the applause stops? What happens when the doors close? What happens when betrayal stings, when loss cuts deep, when prayers go unanswered? Clear, solitude is the proving ground of strength because it strips away the external and asks, clear, can you still stand when it's just you and God? That's where true strength is born, not in the applause, not in the comfort, clear, not in the easy seasons, but in the quiet nights where tears stain your pillow, and yet you still choose to believe that joy comes in the morning. Clear, it's in the mornings when you wake up with no one to motivate you, and yet you get out of bed, you lift your head, you push forward. Strength is not the absence of weakness. Clear, it is the decision to rise again in the presence of weakness. And in solitude, you begin to recognize that being alone does not mean being abandoned. The enemy tries to convince you that solitude is isolation, that no one cares, that you are forgotten. But solitude is actually invitation. It's God inviting you into deeper intimacy, clear, into deeper trust, into deeper reliance on Him. And when you lean into that invitation, you discover a strength that people cannot take from you because people didn't give it to you. Clear, you discover a faith that no circumstance can shake because it was built in the dark where no one else was watching. You discover a resilience that doesn't need validation. Clear, because it was crafted in the secret place where God reminded you you are and whose you are. Solitude births strength because it births clarity, it births resilience, it births authority, clear, and it births a confidence that doesn't waver when life does. Pain can be the foundation of purpose because pain has a way of breaking us open to the deepest parts of ourselves, clear to the places we didn't even know existed until suffering forced us to look closer. Pain strips away the illusions we've built to keep ourselves comfortable. Clear, it dismantles the walls we thought were protecting us but were really only keeping us from healing. It pulls back the curtain on the parts of our hearts that were hidden even from ourselves, clear, and in doing so, it reveals the raw materials of destiny. You can't know the true depth of who you are until you've been crushed by something you thought you couldn't survive. Clear. You can't know the weight of your calling until you've carried burdens you never asked for. Clear. You can't know the beauty of your becoming until you've had to rise from the ashes of things that burned you to your core. Clear. Pain doesn't come to kill you, it comes to uncover the strength you didn't know was there and to ignite a purpose you wouldn't have discovered any other way. Clear, when you look at the stories of people who walk in power, in influence, in unshakable faith, you will almost always see pain woven into the beginning of their journey. Clear. There's something about the breaking that creates a foundation strong enough to carry greatness. Think about it, diamonds are formed under pressure, pearls are created from irritation. Clear, gold is refined through fire. Nothing precious is created without some form of discomfort. So why do we think our lives should be any different? Clear, the very pain we resent is the very pressure shaping us into something rare, something valuable, something purposeful. Pain becomes a chisel in the hands of God, clear, carving away everything that is not aligned with his design. Pain becomes the fire that burns away what is temporary so that what is eternal can shine. Clear, pain becomes the weight that strengthens muscles you didn't know you had. And when you look back, clear, you realize that what you thought would destroy you actually became the foundation for the greatest parts of your life. Pain has a way of humbling us and anchoring us. Before pain, clear, it's easy to think we can handle everything in our own strength. But when pain comes, it exposes the truth. We can't do it all. We can't control it all. Clear, we can't survive it all without help. And in that realization, pain drives us to our knees, and it is there that purpose begins to take shape. Purpose is not born in pride. Clear, it is born in surrender. It is born when you say, God, I don't know why this happened. Clear, but I trust you to make something out of it. It is born when you stop asking, why me? And start asking, what now? It is born when you take the very thing that hurt you and hand it over to God to be transformed into something that heals someone else. Clear. Pain strips away the shallow and leaves you with substance, and that substance becomes the building block of your calling. Clear. There is also something about pain that connects us to others in a way nothing else can. Purpose is never just about you, it's about how your life impacts the world around you. Clear. And when you've known deep pain, you can carry deep compassion. When you've been broken, you can recognize the fractures in someone else's soul. When you've cried yourself to sleep, you can hear the silent cries of another person even when they smile on the outside. Pain builds empathy, and empathy fuels purpose. Clear, the very thing you thought disqualified you from helping others becomes the thing that equips you to walk alongside them. Clear, your scars become maps that show others how to navigate their own wounds. Your tears become rivers that water someone else's dry ground. Clear, your healing becomes the testimony that tells someone else healing is possible for them too. Without pain, your purpose would lack power because pain gives your purpose authenticity. Clear, people don't connect to perfection, they connect to pain transformed into strength. Pain also teaches you endurance, and endurance is essential to purpose. Dreams are heavy. Clear, callings are costly. Destinies demand more of you than comfort will ever allow. If you don't learn how to endure, you won't be able to carry what God has for you. Clear, pain is the training ground for endurance. Every time you survive something you thought would break you, you are strengthening your capacity for what's ahead. Every tear you wipe, clear. Every disappointment you outlast, every heartbreak you recover from, it's all conditioning your spirit for the weight of your purpose. Pain stretches you so that purpose can fill you. Clear. Pain builds resilience so that when your purpose demands long nights, sacrifice, and struggle, you won't crumble under the weight. Clear. What felt like punishment in one season becomes preparation for the next. There's also a sacred intimacy that comes with pain. Clear. Some of the most powerful encounters with God happen in the valley, not on the mountaintop. When you're in pain, when you have no answers, when you can't fix it, clear. When you can't change it, you lean on God in ways you never did before. You hear his voice in ways you didn't when life was easy. Clear. You feel his presence in ways you missed when you were distracted by comfort. Pain presses you closer to the heart of God, and it is in that closeness that purpose becomes clear. Clear. He begins to reveal why you went through what you went through, not always in exact details, but in the way he brings beauty out of ashes, the way he brings strength out of weakness. Clearly, the way he brings ministry out of misery. Pain draws you closer to the source of purpose, and when you're close to the source, you begin to understand that nothing is wasted. Not one tear, Clear, not one heartbreak, not one sleepless night. All of it is being gathered, repurposed, and transformed into something greater than you could have imagined. Clear, even the way pain shapes your perspective is evidence that it's the foundation of purpose. Pain changes how you see yourself, how you see others, how you see the world. Before pain, clear, you might have thought strength was about never falling. After pain, you realize strength is about always rising. Before pain, you might have judged people for their struggles. After pain, clear, you realize grace is the only way any of us survive. Before pain, you might have lived only for yourself. After pain, you realize life is about serving something bigger than you. Clear, pain has a way of reordering your values, sharpening your focus, and clarifying your mission. It takes your eyes off the temporary and fixes them on what truly matters. Clear, that shift in perspective is what allows you to live with purpose, because purpose is not about what you gain, it's about what you give. Pain can feel like the end, but in reality, clear. It's often the beginning. The very moment you think you can't take another step is often the threshold of your next season. Clear. Pain pushes you to birth things you would never birth in comfort. Just like a woman in labor, the pain is not pointless. It's a signal that something new is being born. Clear. And when that new thing comes, you don't look at the pain the same way. You see it for what it was, the process that brought forth new life. In the same way, clear, your pain is laboring to produce something in you and through you that will impact the world around you. And though the process is uncomfortable, though it feels unbearable, though it makes you want to quit, it is working for your good. It is producing perseverance, character, and hope. Clear. It is producing the kind of foundation that can support the weight of your destiny. It is producing the kind of strength that doesn't just carry you clear, but carries others who are still in their own season of pain. Rebuilding is not weakness, it's warfare, because every time you choose to stand up again after life has knocked you down, clear, you are declaring war against the forces that wanted to see you stay broken. Rebuilding is not just about putting pieces back together, it's about refusing to surrender to defeat. It is about pushing back against the whispers of the enemy that tell you'll never rise again, that you'll never recover, that your story is over. Clear. Rebuilding requires courage because it forces you to confront ruins, to face the ashes of what once was, and to decide that those ashes will not be the end of your story. Clear. Warfare is not always fought with weapons you can see. Sometimes it's fought with resilience, with prayer, with persistence, with vision. Clear. And with the audacity to believe that your future will not be defined by your past. When you rebuild, you are fighting against every lie that tried to label you as unworthy. Clear. You are fighting against every betrayal that tried to convince you that you are unlovable. You are fighting against every failure that tried to brand you as incapable. Clear. And this fight is not for the faint of heart, because rebuilding takes energy that most people will never see. They'll see the house restored, the smile returned, the life flourishing again. Clear. But they will never know the nights you cried, the mornings you pushed yourself out of bed when your body wanted to stay down, the moments you silenced voices of doubt screaming in your head. Clear. Rebuilding is spiritual warfare because it is reclaiming territory that the enemy thought he had stolen. Every brick you lay, every boundary you set, clear, every prayer you pray, it is all a weapon, and it is all declaring that you are not defeated. Rebuilding is warfare because it is not just about restoring what was lost. Clear, it is about building something greater than what you had before. The enemy would love for you to settle for scraps, to believe that because something was broken, clear, you have to live in pieces forever. But when you rebuild with God, he doesn't just give you back what you lost, he multiplies it. Clear, he takes what was shattered and turns it into something stronger, more resilient, more refined. Clear, that's why the rebuilding season is so dangerous to the enemy, because it produces a version of you that is wiser, tougher, more faithful, clear, and more equipped than the version that was broken. The enemy fears the rebuilt you more than he ever feared the original you, because you have scars now that tell stories. Clear, you have strength now that was forged in fire. You have wisdom now that only pain could teach, and you have a testimony now that cannot be silenced. Clear, rebuilding is warfare because it means facing resistance. You cannot rebuild without encountering opposition. When you start picking up the pieces, clear. There will be people who remind you of your failures, who doubt your capacity, who mock your effort. There will be voices that say, "Why bother?" Clear, it will never be the same. But you cannot listen to those voices, because rebuilding is not about going back to what was, it's about moving forward into what will be. Clear, and that forward movement is always met with resistance because the enemy does not fight what does not threaten him. Clear. The very fact that you feel the weight of opposition is proof that your rebuilding matters. It is proof that there is something powerful on the other side of your persistence. Clear. So you fight through the doubt, you fight through the exhaustion, you fight through the pain, and every step you take is a strike against the darkness that tried to keep you down. Clear, rebuilding is not weakness because it takes a warrior spirit to look at destruction and still see potential. It takes faith to believe in tomorrow when today feels unbearable. Clear, it takes vision to see beauty in brokenness, to see a masterpiece in a mess. Weakness says, this is the end. Warfare says, clear. This is the beginning. Weakness gives up at the sight of ruins. Warfare picks up the hammer and starts building again. Clear. And the most powerful thing about rebuilding is that you don't need to have it all figured out before you start. You don't need all the resources. You don't need all the answers. Clear, you don't need everyone to agree with you. All you need is the willingness to take one step, to place one brick, to say one prayer, to believe one more time. Clear, that simple act of rebuilding becomes a weapon in the hands of a warrior who refuses to quit. Rebuilding is warfare because it is about legacy. What you choose to rebuild is not just for you. Clear, it's for the generations that come after you. When you decide to rebuild your faith, you're setting a foundation for your children to stand on. When you decide to rebuild your confidence, clear, you're showing others what it looks like to rise again. When you decide to rebuild your dreams, you're creating a blueprint for someone else to follow. Clear. Warfare is never just about the present battle, it's about securing the future. And when you rebuild, you are securing a future that the enemy tried to steal. Clear, you are planting seeds that will outlive you, seeds that will grow into trees of strength and courage for others to find shelter in. Clear. Rebuilding is warfare because it transforms pain into power. Every tear you cried becomes fuel for the fire inside you. Every disappointment becomes a lesson that sharpens your discernment. Clear, every setback becomes a setup for a greater comeback. The process of rebuilding turns wounds into weapons. The very things that once weakened you now become the evidence of your strength. Clear. When you show up with your scars and keep building anyway, you are testifying that the battle didn't break you, it built you. Clear, and that testimony has power to silence the enemy and inspire others to fight their own battles. Rebuilding is not weakness, it is the bravest thing you can do. Clear, it is warfare because it requires faith in what you cannot yet see. It requires the discipline to keep showing up when progress feels slow. Clear, it requires the strength to keep moving when no one is cheering. It requires the courage to keep believing when doubt surrounds you. And every act of faith, every step forward, cleared every wall you raise. It is all warfare. You are not just surviving, you are advancing. You are not just existing, you are reclaiming. You are not just rebuilding. Clear, you are waging war against everything that tried to break you. Faith is the blueprint for restoration because without faith, you have no map, no foundation. Clear, no design for the life you are trying to rebuild. Faith is not a feeling, it is the framework that holds you together when everything else has fallen apart. Clear, when you walk through seasons of loss, betrayal, disappointment, and devastation, faith becomes the architect that sketches out the possibility of a future you cannot yet see. Clear, it draws lines where there are only ruins, it outlines walls where only ashes remain, it places doors where life told you there were none. Clear, faith is the courage to believe that what is broken can be restored, that what is lost can be redeemed, and that what is shattered can be made whole. Without faith, clear, you would only see destruction, but with faith, you see potential. Without faith, you would only see endings, but with faith, you see beginnings. Clear. Faith is the blueprint for restoration because it instructs you where to lay your foundation. You cannot rebuild on bitterness. You cannot rebuild on fear. You cannot rebuild on shame. Clear, because those foundations will always crumble. Faith teaches you to build on hope, to build on truth, to build on the promises of God that do not fail. And when you build on faith, clear, storms may come, winds may blow, fire may burn, but your structure will stand because it is rooted in something deeper than circumstances. Faith is not fragile, it is fortified. Clear, it anchors you to a reality greater than what you feel. It tells you that your life is not over, even when it looks like everything has ended. Clear, it tells you that God is still writing your story. Even when you cannot see the next page, it tells you that restoration is not only possible, it is promised. Clear, faith is the blueprint for restoration because it gives you the vision to see beyond the rubble. It allows you to look at your life and not be defined by its ruins. Clear, it gives you permission to dream again, to imagine again, to plan again. Faith sees what eyes cannot. Where others see a pile of broken pieces, faith sees a masterpiece in progress. Clear, where others see despair, faith sees destiny. Where others see loss, faith sees legacy. Faith shifts your focus from what you lost to what God can build from it. Clear, faith whispers that the end of something does not mean the end of you. It reminds you that what is gone has made room for what is coming, and what is coming is better, stronger, clear, and greater than anything you have lost. Faith is also the blueprint for restoration because it gives you steps, not shortcuts. A blueprint doesn't build the house for you, clear, but it tells you where to start and how to proceed. Faith doesn't erase the process, but it guides you through it. Step by step, brick by brick, moment by moment. Clear, faith instructs you to keep building. When you feel tired, faith reminds you why you started. When you feel afraid, faith assures you that you are not alone. When you feel unqualified, clear, faith declares that God equips those he calls. Faith gives you the stamina to endure the process of restoration without rushing it. It teaches you that true restoration takes time, clear, and that what God is building in you will last longer than anything you try to build in your own strength. Faith as a blueprint means you are not building blindly. Clear. You are not just throwing pieces together, hoping they fit. You are aligning your life with a divine design. And even when you don't fully understand the design, you trust the architect. Clear. You trust that he sees the whole picture, even when you only see fragments. You trust that his plan is greater than your pain. You trust that his timing is better than your timeline. Clear. Faith hands you a blueprint that says, I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Clear. Plans to give you hope and a future. That blueprint steadies your hands when fear tries to make you quit. It steadies your mind when doubt tries to cloud your vision. Clear. It steadies your heart when loss tries to harden it. Faith is the blueprint for restoration because it gives meaning to the mess. Clear. It reframes your perspective and reminds you that nothing is wasted. Every tear is a drop of water nourishing the soil of your next harvest. Clear. Every setback is scaffolding preparing the structure of your destiny. Every delay is a detail in the design you could not yet understand. Clear. Faith interprets the pain not as punishment, but as preparation. Faith reminds you that even the broken pieces still fit into God's plan. And when you trust the blueprint, clear, you stop asking why it broke and start asking how we'll build. Faith is also warfare. Clear, because it demands that you keep believing when everything around you contradicts what you're believing for. The enemy fights hardest in seasons of rebuilding because he knows restoration threatens his hold on your story. But faith fights back. Faith says, I still believe. Faith says, clear, I still trust. Faith says, I still know my God is able. Every time you choose to walk in faith, you are waging war against doubt, against despair, against defeat. Clear, faith is your weapon as much as it is your blueprint. It equips you not only to envision restoration, but to protect it, to guard it, to carry it until it comes to pass. Clear, faith is the blueprint for restoration because it does not only restore what you lost, it restores you. Restoration is not just about rebuilding circumstances. Clear, it's about rebuilding character, rebuilding identity, rebuilding trust in yourself and in God. Faith does the inner work while you're doing the outer work. It reshapes how you think, clear, how you believe, how you live. It heals wounds you didn't know you carried. It uproots lies you didn't know you believed. It strengthens parts of you that were once weak. Clear. By the time the restoration is visible on the outside, faith has already restored you on the inside. That inner restoration is the real miracle because without it, no matter what you rebuild, clear, would never last. Faith being the blueprint for restoration also means that restoration is not random. It is intentional. God doesn't restore halfway. Clear. He doesn't put pieces back together sloppily. He restores completely, carefully, beautifully, with precision. And faith positions you to receive that kind of restoration. Clear. Faith teaches you not to settle for a partial rebuild, not to settle for a life that looks good on the outside but is still broken on the inside. Clear, faith pushes you to believe for the fullness of restoration, joy restored, peace restored, purpose restored, strength restored, identity restored, and hope restored. Clear, faith builds a future that is not defined by your past but redefined by God's promises.